Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are ripping the cover off a story that I think everyone thinks they know.
But very few have actually wrestled with it. We're moving past the common caricature of the big fish story.
Right.
And we're diving into what might be the most uncomfortable lesson in the entire Old Testament. The prophet Jonah, and why he absolutely hated God's grace.
But before we get there, we have to talk about the one thing that pulled this ancient tale right back into the news.
Oh, yeah.
I'm talking about that remarkable modern story that made people stop and maybe reconsider.
The kayaker in Chile, it just happened this past February, a 24-year-old guy just paddling off the coast.
And a massive humpback whale just surges up from below while it's hunting.
It swallows him whole. He described it as just immediate, suffocating darkness.
And then, just as suddenly, he was spat back out, completely unhurt. It's incredible.
And the public consciousness just snapped right back to Jonah. I mean, immediately.
It really did. The internet just exploded. We saw comments everywhere, people saying things like, I used to doubt Jonah's story, but now I believe.
I saw one that made me laugh. Someone imagining Jonah in his grave just yelling, I told y'all!
Exactly. And it's understandable because the popular story always gets reduced to that one question, right?
The technical feat. Was it a whale? Special creature. But our sources are so clear that reducing Jonah to marine biology is to miss the entire complex point of the book.
So our mission today, it's not to figure out the maximum size of a prophet swallowing fish.
Yeah.
It's to uncover the deep discomfort this book forces us to face. Discomfort not about God's power, but about God's extravagant grace.
And our own very human reluctance to see that grace extended to people we see as our enemies.
To get that, you had to set the scene. Who was Jonah?
Jonah was a minor prophet operating around the 8th century BC in ancient Israel, a very tumultuous time.
And what's so interesting right off the bat is the book itself. It's not like the other minor prophets.
Not at all. The others are, collections of sermons, visions, that kind of thing. Jonah's book is just a short, fast-paced story about the prophet himself.
Specifically about his spectacular failure to do his job.
Right. The divine command was simple. God says, go to the great city of Nineveh and preach judgment against them.
A pretty standard prophetic assignment. Go east.
But Jonah's reaction, it wasn't just no. It was immediate, decisive flight.
In the absolute opposite direction.
Yeah.
He's in Joppa, and he books passage to Tarshish.
Which we think is modern-day Spain. He literally fled 180 degrees.
It's like being told to go to Boston, and you immediately head for Los Angeles.
Yeah.
As far away as you can possibly get.
So the question is why? Why the extreme reaction? This isn't just a fear of public speaking.
You have to understand who the Ninevites were.
Nineveh was the capital of the Assyrian Empire. And to Jonah, to any Israelite, they weren't just rivals. They were the embodiment of evil.
Israel's worst national enemy. Known everywhere for their extreme violence, their atrocities.
And the sources remind us this isn't an abstraction. Archaeologists have found the wall reliefs from Nineveh. They're in the British Museum now.
And they just depict this unspeakable cruelty, the torture, the mass executions. It's all carved in stone.
And for Jonah, this was an existential threat. The Assyrians were the empire that would eventually invade and utterly destroy the northern kingdom of Israel in 732 BC.
So this hatred, it ran so deep that defying a direct command from God was the better option.
It seems so. His disobedience wasn't just cowardice. It was political. It was theological. He wasn't just running from an assignment.
He was running from the people.
More than that, he was running from the possibility that these brutal people, his people's tormentors, might actually repent.
And that God might actually forgive them.
He refused to even see them as worthy of God's message.
And this is where the story shifts from just, simple hatred to something much more subtle and honestly more relatable for us.
Right. The core conflict isn't just about geopolitical fear. It's about being profoundly offended when someone else gets grace they absolutely did not earn.
It's that feeling of deep injustice.
Yeah, when mercy crosses a line you've drawn for what's fair.
There's this incredible anecdote in one of the sources that just captures this perfectly.
The middle school story.
Yes. The speaker was a class representative, gets into a big fight with a known bully, a kid named Young Soo, who hits him. They both get sent to the principal's office.
The speaker's mom gets called, and she shows up right away. The bully's parents, they never show.
And after this whole intense meeting, the mom does something just completely unexpected.
She takes both boys to a bakery.
Both of them. and buys them fresh bread and fruit juice.
And the speaker, the one who was the victim here, was just deeply confused and offended.
A sharp sense of betrayal. Why would his own mother show that kind of kindness, that kind of grace to the kid who just hurt her son?
It doesn't feel like justice at all. It feels like you're the punchline.
And that feeling that, wait a minute, that's not fair, that is exactly where Jonah is operating, just scaled up to a national level.
He was profoundly offended by the idea that God's grace could reach Nineveh. I mean, another prophet, Zephaniah, he talks about God joyfully singing over his own people.
But Jonah hears a different song.
A much more challenging song. A song of mercy so wide it could reach his mortal enemy. And he did not want to hear it.
And that's the question the source material really puts to us, to you. Who is your Nineveh today?
Not a place, but a person, a group. Someone you find it almost impossible to see as reachable, as worthy of God's grace.
Because when we feel that kind of offense, when our sense of justice is violated by mercy, we tend to react in one of three ways.
The classic psychological responses: fight, flight, or freeze.
And Jonah gives us a master class in all three.
His first move, of course, was flight. He literally ran.
But we do this too, right? In more subtle spiritual ways. We distance ourselves from God or from people we've decided are unworthy.
Or we just change churches when those people start showing up. We avoid the conversations that make us uncomfortable.
We run when God asks us to engage.
Then there's the second response: freeze. This happens after Jonah finally goes to Nineveh, preaches, and it works.
The entire city repents. From the king down to the animals, they are all in sackcloth and ashes.
And instead of celebrating what is probably the greatest revival in history, Jonah freezes. He goes outside the city, builds a little shelter, and he just sits there.
Waiting.
And hoping God will change his mind and just destroy them anyway.
That's spiritual paralysis. It's what happens when grace doesn't follow our rules.
Right.
We just go through the motions, but we refuse to let God expand our capacity to love.
And then finally, he moves to fight. He actually yells at God. He questions his fundamental nature.
He says, and this is a direct quote, "I knew that you are a gracious and compassionate God. Now, Lord, take away my life, for it is better for me to die than to live."
The sheer audacity of that argument is stunning. He's not saying God is cruel or unfair.
He's saying God is too good.
Exactly. He's telling the creator of the universe, your mercy is excessive, your forgiveness is too wide, and I can't live in a world where they get a second chance.
And God's response to this whole temper tantrum is just a simple question.
He asks him twice, is it right for you to be angry?
And the book just leaves that question hanging in the air for us to answer.
It never resolves Jonah's anger.
But let's go back for a second, back to the darkness. When he's thrown overboard, God appointed a great fish to hold him.
And what he does inside that darkness it's astonishing. He prays a psalm, not a desperate plea, but a song of thanksgiving.
He's celebrating his rescue before he's even been delivered.
And it shows how those dark seasons, those moments of deep discomfort, can be the very places where reality gets sharp again, where our calling becomes clear.
The sources say that feeling of being offended by grace is actually a warning indicator.
It shows you exactly where you need to look inside yourself. The darkness is where Jonah realizes he's been operating out of kind of self-righteousness.
And the guidance that comes out of that, for him and for us, is so simple.
Remember who you were when grace found you. Remember your own darkness.
And, this journey in the dark, in the fish, it became this incredibly deep well of meaning for early Christians.
Oh, absolutely. They immediately saw Jonah's 3 days in the darkness as a sign pointing toward Jesus.
Toward his 3 days in the darkness of death before the resurrection.
But the contrast they drew is so important. Jonah ran from his mission to save his enemies.
Jesus ran toward his.
He became the source of that radical, boundary-breaking grace that Jonah couldn't stand.
And that's why the early church adopted the fish as a secret symbol.
Right. They used the Greek word for fish, ichthys, as an acronym. Iousis Christos Theoiousutor.
Jesus Christ, Son of God, Savior.
So the creature that first represented judgment and darkness for Jonah
becomes the very symbol of salvation for all people. It completely flips the narrative on its head. Grace is for everyone, whether we approve of the recipients or not.
And that's the final lesson. When we're the ones who refuse to extend grace, when we're offended by God's extravagant love for those people,
We're the ones who end up in the dark.
we create our own darkness. Our sources point to that sobering warning from 1 John. Whoever hates a brother or sister is in the darkness and walks in the darkness.
When we hold on to that hatred, we basically put ourselves right back in the belly of the fish.
So the story of Jonah, it's not really about whether a whale can swallow a man. It's about whether a man can stomach God's infinite, boundary-breaking mercy.
It challenges our most basic assumption that we get to be the judges of who is worthy.
So we'll leave you with the question that the source material posed: who is your Nineveh today?
And maybe to build on that, if you feel that offense, that sting of injustice, when God's mercy reaches somewhere you'd rather it didn't, just try to remember who you were when grace met you in your own darkness. What's a challenging song of grace that God is asking you to let reach a little bit further in your life? Think about that until our next deep dive.